So how on earth did we do it? I mean, really think about it. How did humanity go from these small, scattered groups of hunter-gatherers to the massive, complex civilizations that built pyramids and spanned entire continents? It's a huge question, one that historians have been wrestling with for centuries. So let's dive in and see if we can piece together the answer. Today, we're going to trace the incredible 5,000-year story of how we literally invented society. And what you're going to see is that it's this amazing story of innovation, but it's also a story of massive trade-offs. It seems like every time we came up with a solution to one problem, we created a brand new one to solve. All right, so our story kicks off with the most basic human need of all, food. We're in ancient Mesopotamia, where a truly revolutionary idea is about to change not just how we eat, but the very essence of what it means to be human. By learning how to cultivate grains like wheat and barley, humanity basically unlocked a superpower. We didn't have to wander around anymore, constantly searching for our next meal. For the very first time, we could create our own food source, right where we lived. And this stability, it allowed cities like Uruk to just explode, growing from these tiny settlements into bustling metropolises with tens of thousands of people. On the surface, this was a huge, undeniable win. But as you can see here, there was a hidden cost, a big one. We went from being these versatile super athletes on the left to the more specialized, smaller farmers on the right. And our bodies changed, like, dramatically. Why? Well, a less varied, grain-heavy diet and the repetitive, back-breaking labor of farming really took its toll. The average person literally shrank by several inches. And that is our first major trade-off.
Okay, so we've kind of solved the food problem, but in doing so, we've created a whole new one. How do you manage 50,000 people living shoulder to shoulder without it all descending into total chaos? The answer? You're going to need rules, a lot of them.
Over in Babylon, King Hammurabi came up with a pretty powerful solution. He had 282 laws carved onto this massive stone slab and then placed it right in a public square for everyone to see. This created a single set of rules that everyone in the kingdom had to follow. It was basically the groundwork for the legal systems we still use today. And these laws were incredibly direct. No ambiguity here. You've probably heard of this one, an eye for an eye. It established a very clear and, often brutal system of justice. The whole goal was to create predictable consequences for people's actions. But that brings up a good question. Was it actually fair for everyone? Well, not exactly. And this slide really breaks it down. Justice in Babylon was not equal. The punishment depended entirely on who the victim was. As you can see right in the table, if you destroyed a nobleman's eye, you lost your own. Simple as that. But if you destroyed a slave's eye, you just had to pay a fine. So order was established, but it came at the cost of equality. There's another one of those major trade-offs. The Egyptians, on the other hand, took a totally different approach to social order. They created a literal pyramid of people. At the very top, you had the pharaoh, who was considered a god on earth. Then, every single person below them, from the high-ranking bureaucrats all the way down to the peasants farming the land, had one main purpose: to serve the pharaoh. This super rigid top-down hierarchy let them build incredible wonders, for sure, but it was all built on the backs of millions. So as societies are getting bigger, they're getting more organized, but how do they expand? How do they go from being a city-state to a full-blown empire? Well, this next phase of our story is really a battle between two powerful forces, mind and might. Let's see how that played out. Meanwhile, over in Athens, a truly radical idea started to take hold. What if we let the people rule themselves? They developed democracy, where key decision-making bodies, like the Council of 500, were filled by just randomly selecting citizens. I mean, can you imagine? It was a chaotic, often messy system, but it was absolutely revolutionary. But not everyone was a fan of this new democratic experiment. The philosopher Plato, for one, came back with a pretty sharp critique. He argued that ruling a state is like navigating a ship. You wouldn't choose a random person to be your captain, right? No, you'd want an expert, a true navigator who understands the stars and the winds. So, instead of democracy, Plato proposed this idea of a philosopher king, a ruler who was trained in wisdom, logic, and reason. Their motivation wouldn't be power or wealth, but a genuine desire to be the best possible navigator for the ship of state. This sets up this epic conflict of ideas. Should we be ruled by the wise or by the many? And this whole conflict of ideas, mind versus might, it really played out on the world stage. On one side, you've got your empires of might, like Alexander the Great's, forged through military genius and just relentless conquest. But on the other, you've got empires of the mind. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, He never conquered a single village, and yet his ideas on enlightenment created a spiritual empire that spread all across Asia. It even inspired leaders like Emperor Ashoka to abandon bloody conquest in favor of peace. So these massive empires are now dominating the globe. But what happens when they start to bump into each other? While the world gets connected, for better and for worse, this new era of global connection brought incredible trade, but it also brought conflict and clashes of faith. The Silk Road is the perfect example of this new interconnectedness. And it wasn't just one road. It was this sprawling network connecting the great empires of the time. China produced the silk, the Roman Empire desperately wanted it, and the empires in the middle, like the Parthians, got super rich by controlling the trade. This was a pivotal moment in human history, because for the first time, what happened in China could directly affect life in Rome. Now, this connection also meant that ideologies could clash on a scale that had never been seen before. And that brings us to this pivotal year. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for a holy war, urging Christians from all across Europe to march thousands of miles to the Middle East. The Crusades were a direct and very bloody consequence of this new, interconnected world. It just went to show that when different faiths and empires are linked, they don't just trade goods, they also clash over land, power, and God. So why does all of this ancient history matter to us now? Because the solutions and the struggles of these early civilizations, they laid the very foundations of the world we're living in right now. I mean, just think about it. The idea that a ruler isn't above the law, that has its roots in documents like the Magna Carta. Our modern understanding of science, it stands on the shoulders of giants like Aryabhata in India, who proved the Earth was round 1,000 years before it was common knowledge in Europe. And our concepts of art and human potential were forged during the Renaissance by masters like Leonardo da Vinci. These aren't just historical footnotes, they are the source code of our modern world. So, if there's one key takeaway from this whole 5,000-year story, it's that the invention of society has always been about trade-offs. We gained order, but often at the cost of equality. We became globally connected, but that connection also led to global conflict. Which leaves us with a final and pretty crucial question. What are the trade-offs that we're still making today to hold our own complex societies together?